So in chapter 21, we're going to go through the different kinds of benefits, the required and discretionary benefits that we can provide employees. We have to think about key benefit characteristics in terms of all of the benefits that we're going to provide employees. So, universality, who's going to receive this benefit? Is it going to be universal where everyone is eligible, or are only some employees going to be eligible for a benefit? We have to think about conditionality. What triggers benefit eligibility or payment? For example, if you have health insurance, how long do you have to wait to get into the health insurance plan? And then once you use the health insurance plan, when does the employer start paying on that health insurance plan? We have to think about flexibility. Can employees choose or customize the benefit for their own purposes? And this can include things like for health insurance, getting to choose your plan, but it could also be things like can we add dependents or partners to the plan, etc. Visibility is one of the biggest problems for HR. Do employees understand and value a benefit and then their benefits package? A lot of employees don't know all the benefits that are eligible to them, and they may not even know how to access those benefits, how much the employer is paying for them, and even sometimes how much the employee is paying it for them for these benefits themselves. And so, HR, a huge part of benefits is just figuring out how do you communicate those benefits to your employees so that they value them, understand them, and also so they use them. If they're not using them, it may not be that they don't want them. It may be that they don't know that they exist or that they're available. And then we have to think about cost predictability. Can the employer forecast expenses? For a lot of benefits, they only go up as much as inflation. But if you're thinking about something like health insurance, it may be going up faster than inflation. Can we predict that and put that into the price of the benefit, or are we going to have to think about cost saving strategies going into the future? So, required benefits are mandated by federal or state law. The employer has no choice about offering these benefits. They have to, based on the law. There are usually minimum standards set by the government, and then there's penalties for noncompliance. Um, with discretionary benefits, there are voluntary employer office offerings. There may be federal or state law that surrounds those benefits if you're going to offer them. So you have to follow those guidelines. But whether you offer them or not is the discretionary part. It's usually a strategic choice about what to offer in terms of discretionary benefits. You can design flexibility within the legal parameters. So if you can provide a benefit, even if there are laws around how you provide it, you may be able to provide some flexibility that you can't with required benefits. And then this can help you differentiate yourself from competitors. And so that's why a lot of employers provide discretionary benefits. So let's talk about the required benefits first. The first one is Social Security, or what our book calls Old Age Survivors and Disability Insurance. And the reason it's called OASDI is that is who's actually eligible for Social Security. So people put money into the Social Security system, usually because at old age they're going to take it as retirement. But if you die while you're working and you have money in the Social Security system, your survivors, which are usually your dependents and also a spouse, can get that money from the government as well. And then if you become disabled to the extent where you can't work at all, or for some disabilities where your work might be affected by it, you can also take Social Security. So not everyone is 65 or over when they take Social Security. There are lots of people who are taking it before they're 65 for different reasons. With Social Security, these are funded through payroll taxes, which are called FICA. So if you ever see your payroll stub, like your pay stub, you'll see FICA. The employee pays 6.2% and the employer pays 6.2%. So that together they're paying 12.4% total. In 2026, the wage cap will be $183,600. So above that amount, employees will not be paying, and employers won't be paying any more Social Security taxes. That is one reason, or one way that some people think that we can put more money into the Social Security system is by getting rid of the wage cap, because you'll see in a minute with Medicare, there is no wage cap like that. So there are people who are earning a lot of money who aren't paying Social Security on their full earnings. Again, it provides retirement, survivor, and disability benefits, and then it's universal coverage for most workers. There are a few exceptions, like some farm workers don't get Social Security, and some people who clean people's houses, for example, like housekeepers, don't always get Social Security. Medicare is another required benefit. This is health insurance for people who are 65 and over. And just like Social Security, there are some people who aren't yet 65 who are on Medicare because they have certain disabilities that make them eligible for Medicare. On This is again paid through payroll taxes. It's again FICA on your pay stub. Employees pay 1.45%, and then their employer pays 1.45%, and there's no wage cap. So you will always pay 2.9% on your total earnings. There is, with Medicare, an additional 0.9% employee tax on high earners when you earn over $107,000 as an individual or $214,000 when you're a married couple filing jointly in 2026. So there will be lots of employees where they're not paying full Social Security on all of their earnings because they're above the cap. But with Medicare, they're paying the Medicare tax as well as the high earner tax for Medicare as well. Medicare, these taxes are paying for Part A Medicare, which is hospital stays, Part B, which is for medical expenses, and Part D, which are prescription plans. And then these are separate from employer health insurance, which usually covers employees before they're 65 and when they're not eligible for Medicare yet. Another required benefit is unemployment insurance. This is temporary income that replaces that is replaced when people are unemployed involuntarily, meaning they didn't leave their jobs, but they were laid off, for example. These are employer funded through federal and state taxes, and the tax rates vary by the employer experience rating. An employer experience rating changes the tax rate for employers depending on things like how many layoffs have you had in the last few years. The more layoffs you had, the higher the tax is because you have more employees who are taking unemployment from the state and federal government. If you haven't had any layoffs, you might have a lower employer experience rating and a lower tax rate for unemployment insurance. These are state administered plans. They have federal oversight. There is a federal law that says what you have to have, but some states have added to those laws as well. Different states have different number of weeks of benefits, and they also calculate benefits differently. You don't usually get your full paycheck when you take unemployment. You get some percentage of your paycheck, but how much you get will depend on how much you made and how long you were working in the place that you were at. For most states and most periods, like right now, you'll typically get 26 weeks of benefits, so 6 months or half a year of benefits. But for example, during the pandemic, a lot of states increased the number of weeks benefits were that people were able to take unemployment because a lot of people were just out of work for much longer than those 26 weeks. Another kind of required benefit is workers' compensation. This covers work-related injuries and illnesses. It covers the medical costs and also the wages that are lost. It doesn't usually, the wage replacement's not usually 100%, but it is a large proportion of what an employee would normally get paid if they were still on the job. This is also funded by employers and it's state mandated. It's what we call a no-fault system. So if the employee takes workers' compensation, they can't sue their employer for the injury or illness that was caused by their job or by the employer by working there. But that also means employers have to pay regardless of whether they're at fault or if the worker is at fault or someone else is at fault. The premiums are based on industry risk. So industries that are more hazardous, for example, manufacturing, people who are working with chemicals, that sort of thing, their premiums are going to be much higher than in industries like where knowledge workers are at, where they're working on computers all day and there aren't as many dangerous things going on in the workplace that could cause injury or illness for employees. And then employer safety records also matter in terms of how much employers are paying for workers' compensation. If you're not very good at your safety record, if you have a lot of accidents or injuries, and illnesses, you're going to pay a lot more. So one way for employers to reduce the cost on workers' compensation is to have safety training for their employees and to do it regularly. So employees are following safety protocols in the workplace. They're less likely to get injured. They're less likely to get ill. And so their employers are less likely to have to pay out workers' compensation.